And hey, welcome to another virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken, and I'm joined by Bill Arsenault.
Yay!
And it's just the two of us tonight, but we have a lot of movies to get into, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Now, Bill Arsenault, you are currently in Malik Vision, what with the little bit of a lens flare.
Yeah. I'm experiencing the wonderful existential light of nature, even though the light is probably halogen, or I don't know what it is, but it's from a light bulb, so it's not quite the sun, but I'll take it.
So why don't, in that respect, why don't we go into Knight of Cups, which you recently watched?
Yeah, so I've been waiting for Knight of Cups to come out for a while now. Terrence Malick a couple of years ago announced that he was going to do as a follow up to the Wonder, which was his follow up to Tree of Life. He was going to shoot two movies back to back. One of them was going to be called Knight of Cups. The other was going to be called Lawless, which he has changed the title to and is now calling Weightless, which will be coming out supposedly at the end of the year, but for all we know, it could be another 2 years. I don't know. It's tough with Malick. He's kind of he changes his mind a lot in the editing room. It's safe to say.
From what I understand, didn't he shoot some like hundreds of hours of footage, and he's just editing it down into a movie?
Like whole performances, whole actors' performances will just be deleted on a whim, maybe not on a whim, but after careful consideration, I suppose. But
it's not a first time. I mean, one of the best examples is George Clooney's appearance in The Thin Red Line, which is he appears in the end for maybe 2 minutes,
something like that. I think Mickey Rourke was in it too, but he got cut as well.
Mickey Rourke, I think also. Who else? I'm pretty sure it was. Shit. There was an actor in it who has no speaking lines in the movie, even though he's seen like 8 or 9 times, and he had an entire subplot that was deleted.
Yeah, Malick is. He's pretty interesting when it comes to stuff like that because he puts so much effort into his movies and into these. I'm sure he works really closely with the actors, only for him to just completely get rid of their roles once and for all from his movies in the editing process. I think it's pretty funny.
It'd be one thing if he had a lot of deleted scenes on his DVDs, but
he doesn't normally. I mean, The New World was a little different. The New World he actually did an extended cut of. And was reintroduced he introduced some new people into it. But normally he doesn't do deleted scenes or approve of them in any way, unless he doesn't have control of the release.
Right.
But Knight of Cups. Knight of Cups is starring Christian Bale as a aimless Hollywood screenwriter. This is per the synopsis that was written about the film.
Oh, okay.
If you watch the film, you can decipher that that's what he is. Like, there's a couple little scenes where they say, "Hey, have you finished the screenplay?" or "Have you done?" But I'll get into why that's a little confusing, or why it can be confusing for some people.
Okay.
The synopsis says that he's struggling with the death of his brother, and he's looking for his place in the world, and he's lost in a sea of women and excess, which is true. He does go through all that stuff, The movie starts with kind of a fable that's being told. I don't know if it's being told by Brian Dennehy or another character that we never see. Brian Dennehy plays Christian Bale's father in the movie in a great performance, by the way.
It's been a while since we've seen him.
It's been a while since we've seen him, yeah. I always think of him as the guy from Tommy Boy, but the dad in Tommy Boy. That's just me. I know he's been in other stuff, but that's just me. But in this movie, he has he's not in it a whole lot, but when he is in it, he's pretty striking. And the movie follows different chapters, like based off of tarot cards. and the chapters kind of represent different times in his life when he met different women, like Frida Pinto and Imogen Poots, I think is her name. I can't even pronounce her name properly.
Wikipedia has a listing of the chapters. They're based on tarot cards, and it starts with the moon, with a actress named Imogen Poots.
Yeah, okay. She was in Green Room.
Mm-hmm. And then the Hanged Man with Wes Bentley in it and Brian Dennehy in it.
Wes Bentley plays his one of his brothers, the one who's not dead.
The Hermit has Antonio Banderas.
Antonio Banderas plays a playboy.
Ooh, but he does that well. The next one is chapter 4 is Judgment, and Cate Blanchett is in it.
That's his ex-wife in the movie.
The Tower, which is number 5, has Frida Pinto.
She plays a model that he kind of has a fling with, but nothing really happens.
The next one is number 6 is The High Priestess with Teresa Palmer.
Oh yeah. She's like a stripper that like shows him a good time.
And then the last 2 you have Death with Natalie Portman.
Oh yeah, he has an affair with a married woman, and it's implied heavily that she's impregnated with his child, but because she can't figure out whose child it is, she has an abortion.
Ooh.
But we're not quite sure if that happened or not. It's kind of vague.
And the final chapter is Freedom with Isabel Lucas.
Yeah, that one's an interesting chapter because we hardly ever see that woman's face. It's always obscured by something, and supposedly she helps him see the light. The movie starts with this fable about the prince of a king who goes off to find a pearl, and along the way he ends up getting drunk and falling asleep and forgetting about the pearl. That's the fable. And so it's supposed to relate to the story, like Brian Dennehy's the king and Christian Bale is the prince who's forgotten himself and how he's trapped in this excess life of Hollywood, and he's kind of falling in and out of reality, if you will.
It says here the Hymn of the Pearl is a passage of the apocryphal Acts of Thomas, which is something that was, I guess, cut out of
the Bible?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, you know what? It looks like it's one of the Gnostic texts. So
that kind of makes sense. Although I've always seen Malick as, I don't know, he's always been spiritual and if not full-blown Catholic, but or at least Christian. But I don't know exactly what his discipline is. I don't know if it's not agnosticism, or if it's Roman or what exactly. But I know that's traditionally what he's associated with when it comes to the spiritual subtext of his films, or even direct text of his films.
He's dealt, yeah. I mean, pretty much every one of his films has dealt with that directly. So,
yeah. So this movie, I would describe it as Jodorowsky meets David Lynch's Inland Empire. It's very weird, but it's weird in a good way. I like the movie. I don't know if there's really an arc to it. There's kind of a forced arc where it's like Christian Bale's character, I think his name is Rick or Mark or something. What does it say on the Wikipedia page?
Christian Bale plays Rick.
Okay, I got it right. Rick. Rick.
What is it with Ricks?
Yeah, what is it with Ricks? Fuck you, Rick Berman. You ruined this too. Rick, his performance of Rick is basically just him looking around, kind of stoic and sad, sometimes smiling, but usually just stoic and sad. I would say
Batman,
the real,
basically.
So not quite Batman. He's not giving his death metal performance. He's like, he's never doing that. But that would have made the movie that much better. But
where's my screenplay?
Yeah, really. What'd you say to him? No, the movie. is edited and produced and designed in such a way where memories exist not as a static, incident where like this is exactly what happened, but rather as a feeling.
Okay.
Anytime there's a flashback or something, which really the flashbacks kind of exist at the same time with the normal flow of the movie, which is to go backwards and forwards and stay in the present at the same simultaneously. It's really weird how the time shifts in this film. Sometimes within the same shot, I would say. There's a moment where Brian Dennehy is giving some kind of a monologue, and he's doing so on a stage in front of an audience that's clapping, but we're not sure if that's actually... It's not so much that we're not sure. I think it's very clear that it's not happening, but it's supposed to mean something a little bit more. Like maybe it's existing within Rick's mind, as it were. Like maybe he sees his dad as kind of a performer of sorts. Like whenever he's yelling, he's always performing, something like that. He never says that, but that's kind of the impression that I got. Dennehy yells a lot in this movie. Every scene we see him in, he's always like, I was trying to be a good father to you. That's pretty much the extent. But every time he's on there, he's always striking. And this is a weird movie to decipher. I mean, not so much because it's not clear what the goal is. The goal is pretty clear, is that Bale's character has to get the pearl, which is, I guess, the reason for his life or something, the reason of existing or some shit. But what isn't clear is the journey. Like, when is all this happening? At what point? And, all this stuff is jumbled together. And it's almost as if it's happening, like, at this point, Bale has already finished his journey by the time the movie has started, and he's remembering everything in this one straight line that is jumbled up and scrambled. You know what I mean? Like he's remembering things, differently. Like not quite as it happened, but just...
Well, one thing that we know about memory is malleable, and depending on malleable, and depending on depending on how you experience things and how your life goes, your memory of events could alter to the point where they may not actually represent exactly what occurred. It's kind of interesting how your brain works.
Yeah, it's like we associate smells with different incidences in our lives, or tastes or things like that. Like this reminds me of this, and that memory may not be exactly what happened, but that's probably how you felt at that moment. So you're kind of your mind and your body is kind of trying to adjust to that.
I associate malt liquor with the taste of the taste of
college.
Well, I was correcting myself because it's not the taste of college so much as it's like the feeling of college. The problem is I haven't had malt liquor since then, and I'm never going to again. Just the same way I'm probably never going to college again. So.
Well, to have your own Malick vision, I suppose we all have to get drunk for that. This isn't an offense to Malick. I really liked Knight of Cups. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably one of the best films I've seen this year. But, the only point against this, I would say, is that it is open for parody. It's a great film, but it's also it's a different kind of Malick film. To the Wonder was experimental in one sense, but it was also kind of a straight narrative.
There are a lot of comedic actors in this movie, by the way.
Oh yeah, but they have like bit roles. Like Nick Kroll is in it for 1 second.
Thomas Lennon, Nick Offerman.
Yeah, they appear in the background or something. They appear like at a party.
And then not a comedic actor, but Michael Wincott. He's in it. That's interesting.
Yeah, these different actors are like it takes place in Hollywood, so it's like they had to fill in the Hollywood people. You occasionally see someone pop up next to Bale, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" And it's like, "Oh, did they just shoot a real party?" And I think that's what they did. I think they just told Bale, "Hey, act like Rick at a party."
Shooting the rodeo, so to speak.
Shooting the rodeo, so to speak. Yeah, except, except that I don't know. Except it's interesting for that Malick would do something of this nature. It's a different kind of Malick. Like I said before, it's not a straight narrative, so to speak. It's straight in terms of, I guess, how the movie is being remembered by the main character, how he's remembering the different chapters in his Hollywood life, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But it's not straight in terms of how that all plays out. It's all very much scrambled, like I said. It's all very much mixing and mingling with each other and popping in and out. There are different points when characters who represent a different chapter appear before that chapter very quickly, or later after that chapter. Like, and I don't mean just in a cut. I mean like they're in the background and they're just like looking at the camera or something. There's a lot of serendipity in this film, and that's something I really like in filmmaking. There's also a lot of, as per usual with Malick, he hires the best directors of photography. I believe this was Eugene Lubetsky.
Emmanuel Lubetsky.
Emmanuel Lubetsky. Okay, I don't know why I said Eugene. Hey, Gene, get over here. He, they capture moments really well, like, and also moments to moments too, like the things in between, like the transitions. Whatever is trying to be expressed at that time, mm-hmm. they're able to do it with what they're capturing. And that's impressive considering that it's all very open. It's like open world, like in a video game, where you can just go and do anything. It's almost like that. Like there's no, Jack Fisk was the production designer on this, but it's not like there's a specific set. He has an apartment. Rick's character, the character of Rick, has an apartment. That's really the only actual like steady set, I would say, in this movie. Everything just kind of takes place in different parts of Hollywood, or in the desert, or in a weird landscape or something. So it's like, it's in that sense, it's very fluid. It's very open. And
so the question begs then, is Terrence Malick sort of the highbrow Neil Breen?
Ooh, no, that's not cool, man.
They both deal heavily with spiritual themes, and
no, you see, no,
a lot of outdoor photography.
I get what you're going after, but there's a total difference here. I mean, if we're to talk seriously, there is a difference between Neil Breen.
They're heavy into symbolism,
But one is more blunt than the other. I mean, Terrence Malick, you can pick out when he's being Malick. Yes, he's always being Malick. He's always doing his style. But
you know what? Much like Terrence Malick, I defy you to come up with a singular meaning behind Fateful Findings.
I'm gonna have to watch that movie in full. I haven't seen it all in full. I got it though, but I'm gonna watch it like probably this weekend actually, because I just recently acquired it. But no, I mean there's a difference, dude. It's not like I mean like one is trying to attain this stylistic level, and the other has already reached it.
Okay.
One is more obtuse and blunt, and the other is subtle and profound.
Okay.
And I will leave it to you to figure out which one is which.
Fair enough. Any closing thoughts on Knight of Cups or
Knight of Cups? I don't think in talking about it I've really done it any real justice. I'm not trying to say this is the greatest film ever. I'm trying to say that it is a little hard to describe.
Well, yeah, Malick is very difficult to put into words.
Yeah, I remember seeing the Thin Red.
Badlands is kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, Badlands is a little bit, but that's an example of another. That was like his straight narrative time, his straight narrative era. Now he's entered like, it's almost like with Francis Ford Coppola, where Coppola is now in the digital filmmaking renegade era where he's just say what you will about Twixt, but he's doing things differently than he was 30, 40 years ago. Terrence Malick, from once he started with Tree of Life, now he's like just gone off and doing a whole different almost genre or type of filmmaking. He's just figuring things out and working almost. That's probably why it's taken him so long to make these particular movies, is because he's figuring out as he's going along. So that might be part of why it's a little hard to describe, but I would recommend it highly. Some people might, to quote an audience member after watching Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, this audience member who was a teenage girl said, that was gay. So some people might say that, but I would say come into this movie with an open mind and just kind of, wait till the end to make up your to at least do what that girl did and wait to the end. Then you have the right to say if this is gay or not. So give it a chance. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look it up as soon as I have an opportunity to do so. And next on our list we have Finding Dory, which I saw, but you did not see, correct?
No, I did not see it.
All right. Now, first of all,
I should also state I did not see Finding Nemo either.
Really? You haven't seen either?
No, I haven't seen either of them. I've seen pieces of Nemo, and it looks really great. But
I first of all want to ask, what is your familiarity with the Pixar canon in general?
I think I'm pretty familiar. I don't really care for the Cars movies that much. I haven't seen.
Does anyone who cares about the Pixar canon?
I also haven't seen Finding Nemo, so I can't speak to those. But I've seen most of the Pixar movies, and I kind of follow. I understand that there's kind of a Pixar theory where they're all kind of connected somehow by
that's all bullshit.
by centuries or something.
That's all bullshit.
Okay, well, it's still fun to think about, but it's probably bullshit. But yeah, I am familiar with the different characters and all that. Yeah.
I would say Finding Nemo is probably in my top 3 Pixar movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the original Finding Nemo is a wonderful story about family, about friendship, beautifully animated for the time, and it holds up very well now. The writing is top-notch. The humor is fantastic. The colors, the art style of it is just vivid, top to bottom. Voice performances from the likes of Albert Brooks and Willem Dafoe and Ellen DeGeneres. And one thing that's actually kind of interesting is Finding Nemo also has a lot of voice performances from people who were Pixar animators.
Okay.
Mostly because, like in a few cases, they really couldn't come up with a voice who truly fit what they were trying to do. And Pixar is known for basically recording all the dialogue to a movie before they even bring in voice actors in order to get an idea of how the movie should flow. Okay. So basically they have whoever they can jump in and give their voice.
Hey, Terry, would you mind voicing this fish?
Exactly. And so
yeah,
in that case, for instance, a good example is you have you've seen Monsters, Inc., right?
No.
Really?
Yeah, really. I haven't seen those. Okay, those are the other ones I haven't seen. Monsters, Inc. and Monsters U. I haven't seen those.
All right. I'm trying to think of one that you could... Oh, you've seen A Bug's Life, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know the big caterpillar that speaks with a weird German accent?
Yeah.
That wasn't a voice actor. That was one of the animators. And one of the stories behind that was they couldn't find a voice actor who was doing the accent as like their goal was to go for just stereotypical German, and no one was hitting it. Everyone's being too good, and they realized, wait a second, our animators are doing it better. And so I forget who it is, but the voice is just one of the animators. So
Okay.
yeah, that's something that's interesting that Nemo did. And Finding Dory, of course, is the extension of that. Now, first of all, I'm going to say I hold Finding Nemo in a very high regard. It's perhaps inevitable that a sequel to Finding Nemo would not quite live up to the greatness that was the original. This film, though, is that's not to take anything away from this movie. This is Pixar maintaining the heart that they have in some of their best films, but trying to do something a little more comedic, a little bit more fun, and they accomplish that. The story, I know you haven't seen Finding Nemo. Long story short, the basics of it is Albert Brooks plays Marlin. He's this little clownfish, and his son Nemo is captured by a scuba diver and taken, and he goes on a journey to find him.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, he finds him. And so in Finding Dory picks up after the events, approximately a year after the events of the first film. And Dory...
Shouldn't these fish be dead by then?
Yeah, but, you know...
Well, it's a movie, whatever. That's fine.
Hey, I mentioned A Bug's Life. They mentioned
maybe it's
season to season. A Bug's Life would be, you know, like 30, 40 days long.
Maybe it's fish life, you know, like in fish time, fish years. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and actually, come to think of it, can't operate quite that way, because in Finding Nemo, they make very specific the lifespan of sea turtles.
Oh, so things do kind of play by a set of rules.
Because sea turtles live like, you know, 100 years and stuff like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyway, where this movie picks up, Finding Dory picks up after these events, and now Dory is a friend that Albert Brooks' character Marlin met along the way in the first film. She's basically a fish voiced by Ellen DeGeneres who has a problem, and that problem is she has short-term memory loss.
Oh yeah, isn't that like a problem with most fish?
Well, that's sort of a play on the joke of, you know, a goldfish.
Goldfish, yeah.
You know, a goldfish only remembers things for... It's technically... I mean, it's kind of an apocryphal thing. It's not actually true. But it's a funny joke. And the idea being, with Dory, she literally cannot form short-term memory. She can commit things in long-term form, but like short-term, if you say, you know, she'll come up to you and say, "Hi, I'm Dory." And then you'll have a conversation with her, and then a few minutes later, if she turns around, she'll turn back to you and say, "Hi, I'm Dory."
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it's played for laughs in the first film, and she's sort of comedic relief. There's a little bit of heart to that, but in this film, they kind of... First of all, the story focuses on her as the main character.
Yeah. And
they build in this plot of what she was doing in the first place in the first film. Of course, because she has short-term memory, she doesn't remember how she got where she was, but it turns out that she wound up in the middle of the ocean to begin with because she found she was separated from her parents, and she spent apparently a long time searching for her parents, and then she forgot that she was searching for her parents.
Okay.
So that's kind of the joke of it. But it gets into the heart of that, because when she realizes that is what she's missing, you know, somewhere along the line her parents disappeared. That's, you know, she sets out to try to find them, and the story leads them to this marine aquatic research center, which is basically just a big hippy dippy aquarium on the shores of California.
Okay.
And The movie has this great sense of humor about things because you first discover that her parents were in an aquarium because Dory's like having all these like flashes of things that she remembers, but only like in these tiny fragmented pieces. And one of them is she recognizes a voice, and that voice is the voice of Sigourney Weaver.
Uh,
You see, have you ever been to a museum and they have throughout the museum they have like a celebrity voice narrating certain sections of the exhibit?
that's pretty clever. I like that. All
Right. So
right.
Sigourney Weaver narrates the exhibits at this aquarium. And so it starts off with she's swimming through the water and you see like a dock and so suddenly you hear, "Hi, I'm Sigourney Weaver."
That's
And
pretty
Dory
funny. I like that.
Dory starts talking to the disembodied voice of Sigourney Weaver, which is pretty awesome. I have to say, Ellen DeGeneres really, I mean, in the first film, some people accuse her character of being a little overly comedic relief. I disagreed with that criticism, and I think in this movie, she really finds this humanity, this center to the character that is great. And it really is one of the great voice performances I've heard as a character because on one hand, she's this kind of doofy, clumsy character, but she has this heart, this warmth to her that is inherent. And her first instinct, whenever she sees someone in need of help, is to do what she can to help them. And sometimes to her own detriment, she wants to help them more than they want her help. For instance, she in this film winds up in the she winds up in the research center and she befriends. Well, befriend is kind of a. She runs into this octopus voiced by Ed O'Neill, and the octopus is the kind of octopus that can change his color to kind of blend in with the background, and so there's a great visual motif there with him constantly changing colors and moving. Like when you first see him, his like face, you see like a poster, and like the poster starts to get really contorted and weird, and then suddenly you realize, oh, that's an octopus moving around, and there's the poster behind him, and that joke follows through a few times. And Ed O'Neill is an octopus who is deathly afraid of the ocean, and all he wants is to be taken even further from the ocean to a aquarium in Cleveland because
When you were saying like he wants to go inland, I immediately thought Cleveland.
You're
and
kidding.
Then you said Cleveland. I was like, does he want to go to Cleveland? And you're like, Cleveland.
Exactly, fucking Cleveland. Well, when you think about it, Cleveland is just about. I mean, when you think of nondescript central, American kind of city, you think, Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old joke in Kentucky Fried Movie. Send him to Detroit.
No.
Anything but Detroit. But yeah, it's that same thing though. So anyway, and apparently what this aquarium does is fish who are not capable of being reintroduced back to nature that are either they've been in captivity so long that they wouldn't survive in the natural world, are they're shipped to this aquarium in Cleveland, and the octopus wants to go there because he fuck the ocean. The ocean's dangerous. And Dory has been tagged because of Dory's disabilities. Dory has been tagged by researchers as one of the fish bound for Cleveland. And the octopus basically makes a very grudging deal with her that he'll help her find her parents if she gives him his tag so he can go to Cleveland. It's this weird story. There's a lot of these weird humorous moments in it. Along the way, other characters she meets are a whale who's at this research center because unlike most whales who have sonar abilities, you have one whale who is who has poor vision and can't find herself around. You have another whale whose sonar he should be able to use, but he has sort of a psychosomatic symptom that he won't accept that he has the ability to use sonar. And it's very, character based. Every character she meets along the way has these interesting comic elements to them that are developed. There's a couple seals that live outside of the facility, and the joke that a lot of people who've seen the trailers have seen it is that there's this probably mentally challenged seal that heavily implied that keeps trying to get on the rock with them, and they keep barking him off of the rock. And it's like a recurring joke. The mentally challenged seal is named Gerald. Now, I don't know if you've noticed a theme here, but there's the recurring theme in this film is disabilities.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What this movie does is it establishes, first of all, the normalcy that these are all. Forget that they're anthropomorphized characters. They're essentially these characters are anthropomorphized because they reflect human attributes. And so if you take that from a human perspective, all of these characters have an innate humanity to them. And it's interesting how the story shows that despite their various maladies that they may have, whether it be physical or mental or emotional, they find a way to they find their way in the world, and they don't need help per se. They are very independent minded in their own ways, and it's actually a really refreshing story in that respect. I'm surprised that you haven't seen a lot of critics talk about that in the way that it deals with impairment in a way that is actually very enlightening, and it doesn't talk down to the characters.
All right. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So overall, I enjoyed this film. It's much lighter than your typical Pixar film in that it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really have any. You won't have the moment like in, say, The Good Dinosaur where the father dies, or you won't have the extended 10-minute sequence at the beginning of Up where.
Oh yeah, you see the whole lifespan of this relationship,
mm-hmm.
and it's just so sad what happens at the end of it. Yeah.
Or WALL-E, where it's the fucking apocalypse. Yeah, no, you won't get anything like that in this. It's just a fun, old-fashioned, entertaining animated film with solid performances and very creative writing.
Okay.
That's really all I have to say about that.
Well, I might just go see it this weekend then. Do I have to see Finding Nemo to kind of, going into this, or I don't mind seeing Finding Nemo. I just, will I have to?
I would say Finding Nemo is definitely it would help you to understand the characters, but I don't think it's necessary to have seen it. The one thing you would get for seeing Finding Nemo first is you would get the depth of the bond of friendship between Marlin and Dory, because Marlin and Nemo set out to catch Dory when she goes off on her own to try to find her parents. And in other outside of that context and what you see of her at the beginning of the story, you might be left thinking, why do they even bother with her? So the first film establishes that relationship a little bit more.
Okay.
And actually, by the way, the first movie does begin with a classic Pixar depressing moment. So I don't want to spoil it because I think you'd appreciate.
What, like dolphins being eaten?
Well,
you don't have to spoil it. I don't
want to spoil it for you. Needless to say, it's probably, at a technical level, it's the highest body count that you've ever seen in a Pixar movie. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, okay, like goldfish being flushed down a toilet or something?
I'll move on to the next topic. So,
okay, all right.
Did you have any other questions about Dory?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Animation's gorgeous, and I actually have one more thing. The short film that premiered before it is also a seafaring short film. It's called Piper, and it's about the sandpipers, the little birds that kind of trudge along the beach picking up clams and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The animation is goddamn photorealistic. It is insane and brilliant. Some of the best I've ever seen in a CG animated film. And now it's just a short, so they clearly just poured a ton of budget into this, 4-minute segment. But it's really great. The humor in it is great. It's about this little bird. Basically, a mother's trying to teach her little baby bird to go find food for himself, and the little bird gets traumatized by the fact that the sea continually tries to swallow him up. And because a little bird against the waves crashing down, that'd be a little traumatic. Sure. And the way it's told is really fun, and it's definitely reminds me of last year with Feast, where it's Pixar at their cute emphasis. But the animation style is so good that you can't help but enjoy it.
So it's better than Lava.
Oh, fuck Lava.
No one likes Lava.
Lava is just the worst.
I thought it was heading in a good direction with the depressing story, like the guy doesn't get the girl at the end, but then suddenly he gets the girl at the end. I was like, oh fuck this.
Yeah, I mean that actually, if he didn't, that would actually almost have turned it around for me. But it goes on for fucking ever too. It's like a 7.5-minute song, and the verses are the same. It's the same over and over again. And the only joke in it is the fact that love kind of, sort of, not really doesn't actually rhyme with love.
Well, what was the other short that came out? The one with Good Dinosaur. It was Super Team?
Sanjay's Super Team.
Sanjay's Super Team. That was a good one. I liked that. Was cute.
Yeah, I liked that. That was, once again, Pixar in the cute category, and that was okay. This is better than those by like a mile. This is more like peak era Pixar shorts. I would put it up there with things like For the Birds, or if you've ever seen, have you seen Tin Toy?
No.
Oh, okay. Tin Toy is a pre-Toy Story Pixar short.
Oh. And
it actually won Academy Award for animated short.
Okay. So
as a film buff, I would suggest tracking down the Pixar collection. It's a DVD that I got for like $5, and it basically collects the first like 15 years or so of Pixar's animated shorts.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because they did a lot of shorts prior to Toy Story coming out that they're hard to find elsewhere. And some of them are really good. But anyway, so Pixar out the way. Now we have movies to talk about that we've both seen.
Yay!
But first, we're going to talk about Independence Day Resurgence. Boo.
Oh.
So, Bill, I'm going to let you start this one off.
Okay.
What did you think?
Should we preface this with a brief thoughts on the first movie, or is the first movie's thoughts rather established?
Well, a couple weeks ago, I talked about it to an extent because I rewatched it after not having seen it since it came out. And
then in my thoughts on this new movie, I'll bring up my thoughts on the original and kind of compare them a little bit at a certain point.
Sure, I'll jump in on that one when I have something to give, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I went into this believing it was going to be horrible because I had seen the trailers and I have a brain. The trailers looked like a Funny or Die parody. You know, it looked kind of like the Willy Wonka has gone crazy or is now a madman trailer.
I have expected Jeff Goldblum to introduce himself as Chef Goldblum.
Yeah, right. It looked like a joke. You know, it didn't look like a real movie. It looked like someone was like, "Hey, remember the Independence Day? That was popular. Well, what if they were to make it again, but as a sequel? What let's do a what if trailer." And then that's what we got. But unfortunately, this turned out to be a real movie. I went to go see
when they did a bumper parody back in the early 2000s, and it aired on HBO once in a while. It was a fake trailer for Pearl Harbor 2, Pearl Mageddon. And that's what the trailer kind of made me think of. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that's okay. It certainly isn't in on its own joke. The movie is a joke, but it's not in on it. The movie actually thinks it's doing something, doing justice to the original movie. Like, oh, remember the original movie? Well, we're gonna, rabble rouse again, and do all that shit. I went into this movie with my brother, and we sat down, and the theater wasn't even half full. Now, granted, this was a Thursday night showing of a 2D presentation. I don't know what the IMAX viewing was like. I don't know what the regular 3D viewing was like. I don't know what the Friday viewings were like, but I know that for this, it wasn't even half full, and it was a pretty big theater room. And no one laughed at the jokes. There were a couple of gags where people chuckled, like when the windshield wipers on the school bus, wiped away the goo.
Yeah.
Some people were like, "Oh, ha ha ha," but for the most part, no one was fucking laughing at this. With this, not at this, probably inside. I actually kind of laughed a couple times, but not because the jokes were funny, but because what I was seeing was funny. For example, Liam Hemsworth, anytime he's trying to control the ship that he's flying, what is it called? The gag or the tag or some shit? It's got like the tug. When he's trying to control the tug, he's like got this look on his face that looks like he's constipated. In fact, in my review of it, which I wrote up for my new site, BillArsenault.com, thank you, original name, I used a screenshot from the trailer of him giving that very face. And the face is like that.
That's Liam Hemsworth's emotion.
Yeah, it's just scream, or it's to look like he's screaming.
It is his emotion. He has only one.
He has only one drive. He's not a good actor, by the way. His brother is a good actor, I think, but
I would agree.
It hasn't rubbed off. This movie is mostly old people from the first movie looking very tired and exhausted and just pathetic.
Ready to cash that paycheck.
Ready to just get it over with. Like, all right, is this movie almost over or whatever?
Bill Pullman was in such a hurry to get out of this movie.
Bill Pullman was like, when do I get to shave this fucking beard off? Jeff Goldblum was like, when do I get to go back to my trailer? Robert Loggia was like, when do I get back to my assisted living home?
You realize, Bill, we're going to be talking about the Free State of Jones pretty soon, and yet Bill Pullman's crazy beard in this was more raggedy and fucked up looking than any beard in that movie.
Right? It was very gnarly. It's like he grew it out, assumedly. I mean, unless that was like a great looking beard, I don't know, but I think he grew it out for this role. And I guess they told him, "Hey, you want to be in Independence Day 2?" And he was like, "No." And then they said, "But you'll get to play a version of your character who is haunted by nightmares of aliens." And
I think it's more like Roland Emmerich called him and said, "You won't have to shave?"
That was the final pitch.
And maybe during shooting, they were like constantly telling him, "Come on, we'll up your salary. We'll give you a few more $100. Can you shave just right here?" No. And then finally, they convinced him.
I think Bill Pullman is at the point of his career where he really doesn't have to prove anything. He's made his movies that he's had to make.
Oh, yeah.
He made Zero Effect. That was a great movie. He did Independence Day, the first one. He did his quotable moment.
I've liked Bill Pullman since Ruthless People.
Yeah, he's always been great, but
yeah.
Now it's like he doesn't really have to do anything anymore. It's kind of like Robert De Niro, except De Niro doesn't know when to stop.
And even Pullman manages to appear in decent enough movies once in a while.
He was in that bad Max Landis movie that Hawk Ripjaw kind of likes.
American Ultra.
But Bill Pullman does a good job in it. He plays like some badass CIA manager who's managing these agents, and he's like, "You guys fucked up, so I'm gonna shoot you in the head in the woods." He doesn't say that, but he does that. He's basically just a manager, like a grocery store manager who happens to work at the CIA. That's how he plays that, but he does it well. I'm being kind of mean here, aren't I?
Independence Day takes place 20 years after the first film.
Pretty much exactly 20 years after the first film. And at this 20-year point, the aliens, I should mention there is a lore to this movie. In between the first and the second, it's brought up in the sequel, in Resurgence, that there was a 10-year ground war with the aliens in a section of Africa. Assumedly, when the ships crashed all over the planet, there were some ships that still had aliens in them that were still alive.
Well, it's heavily implied that they say that the ship in Africa is the only one that landed, so they imply that Africa is the only continent.
They suggest that was, yeah, you're right, they do. But anyways, they suggest that, and the warlords in the area ended up putting aside their differences and just fighting the aliens. So now there's a whole slew of people who have been alien fighters for 10 years.
I would have wanted to see that movie.
I would have rather seen that movie as a found footage film or something, or just a regular film. If they have to do found footage, go found footage. But I
want to see Beasts of No Nation, but instead they're fighting aliens.
Might as well. I mean, like, dude, that would have been incredible. By the way, the young actor from that movie is going to be in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
That's good news.
That's really good. He might be Miles Morales for all we know. I don't know. But anyway, that's a positive note. This movie is a negative note, very negative note. This whole movie feels like just the cheapest of cash-ins.
Did you notice that the CG was pretty
terrible?
Poor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you could see the seams in the green screen, for example. Every time someone was against a green screen, you could easily tell the lighting wasn't as good. There was something wrong with the color or the lighting behind them, but in front of them, it looked fine. So it's like they're in front of the green screen.
Of old school process shots, and those were forgivable, in the 70s. But now that's like, what the fuck? You can cover that up.
You didn't get to see Highlander Endgame in the theaters, did you?
Oh, no.
Okay, I actually saw Highlander Endgame in the theaters with my dad and my brother because the wrestler Edge made an appearance in the movie. And by appearance, he was only in it for like 30 seconds. I knew nothing about Highlander lore at the time. I was just wanting to see this movie which is a good thing, because if I had, I would have been more disappointed.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, and this was a bad movie too, haphazardly edited movie. The end shot of the movie is the second Highlander, what's his name, Dylan McLeod?
I only know. Here's the thing.
McLeod?
I've seen the first and the second film, so I only know Connor McLeod.
Okay, he's the other McLeod. He's the one that's in Highlander, the series, the TV series.
Okay.
And he's looking at the grave. He's mourning the grave of Connor, and he's doing this in front of what's supposed to be a sky of blue. Mm-hmm. But as it turns out, it was not a sky of blue. It was actually the blue screen that they didn't process an image over. So they just left the blue screen up and were like, oh, we'll just do it later. And then they never got to it. And when I saw the movie, because I was a videographer when I was a kid, I used to do like video editing jobs here and there. And I was like, that's a fucking blue screen. They just left it up. That killed me when I saw it. And this movie, anytime I see a movie with poor, image processing or green screen, stuff like that, it's just, I can understand if some shots are a little harder to do, like if you're on top of a building or if you have to process multiple effects in one particular shot. Like some things are just hard to do. But when we're talking about just a background, walking in front of a background, that's like 101, really, especially nowadays when you can do this on a MacBook and make it look great,
Yeah, the effects. I think the biggest problem I had with it is that the effects are visibly weaker looking than what we had in the original film, and that was like, because the original film did use a lot of CG, but it also used
miniatures and matte paintings, miniatures, all that good stuff.
There was some practical effects in it that was, and yes, the alien itself, I can understand CGing the alien creatures because it was a little clunky rewatching it, but overall,
I kind of like seeing real puppetry. You know what I mean? Like tentacles with slime on it and everything.
And that's the problem. You can, the aliens in this just look so much more fake because the tentacles are flying all over the fucking place, and
that's all we see really, and except for the mother alien, which I guess, are we going to get into spoilers or?
What's to spoil? Go ahead.
You're right. There's a queen mother alien, and they're like, okay, if we kill that, we'll kill the giant super ship. Basically, it's the same plot, except this time it's more focused on a specific creature. And the mother alien, we actually get to see run around in the desert, and they're trying to bait it with a talking AI space egg.
We haven't even gotten into the talking AI space.
We haven't even gotten into that yet. That was an interesting aspect. I thought, like, if this were a better movie, that could have been really cool.
Voiced by a terrible voice actress. Whoever that was reading the dialogue in just the worst.
It was like they were told they weren't reading it for a movie. They were told they were reading it for a customer service automation. And you know all about that too, because that's your day job. But anyways, the effects are pretty poor. My brother said he liked the laser fights, and I told him, I pretty much told him in the nicest of ways, that's exactly what they want you to feel. That's what they're banking on, is that you'll just forget about everything and focus on the laser fights. It's kind of like, I compare this movie to Attack of the Clones, in terms of like the bad effects and also, ooh, look at the lights.
I want to tie this into the first film a little bit, in that, here's the thing. I mentioned this previously, but I'll go ahead and just throw this out here. The first film, I've never really liked it. I've never really thought it was that entertaining. When I rewatched it this year, I found it to be
corny, grating.
The characters were just kind of these blank, stereotypical, like, you have Jeff Goldblum, who is Nerd Man, and his father, who is Jewish old man.
Who's Jew Man.
Yeah, exactly.
He's Juana Man.
Yeah, Juana. That's a good one. Yeah, and then you have Bill Pullman, who's
President Man.
He's Guy Whitey, Corn Good President. And then you have what else? You have Will Smith, who is, he's requisite tough guy, badass.
You have Harvey Fierstein, who's Harvey Fierstein.
He's
basically Harvey.
Yeah, he is himself, and that's fine. I actually, he's one of the.
I have to call my lawyer. Oh, fuck that guy. I was like, okay, we don't need this.
He didn't give a shit. He was just going to do himself, and that's fine. You do you. And
then what this movie does, what Resurgence does best, is make you believe, or to make you see the light that the first movie.
The first movie
you can appreciate more.
The first movie makes this movie look or rather, this movie, like the first movie, looks like a David Lean picture compared to this one.
It looks like an epic Oscar winner, right? Like you said.
And that's not. It's the first movie is not very good.
The first movie's not that, but the first movie does a lot of things well that this movie couldn't possibly ever do.
There are enough people who like the first film that I respect. If I hear a single person I respect say they saw this movie, this new one, and like it, I don't know what I'll think of them.
To me, this is more like, this isn't apples and oranges. This is apples and rotten apples.
They're two completely different fucking movies, pace-wise. Let me say this. The one thing that the first movie does right is in tribute to the old-fashioned epics, where it deals with all of these different characters all over the world as they experience these events that are of world importance.
Destruction. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. And so you have these scenes all over the place, but this movie feels claustrophobic. You have the characters who are on the side of the American army, and you have the aliens, and then you have a few pickup shots of Arabs in the desert. That's it.
Or Africans in the desert. Oh yeah, there were shots of Arabs in the desert for no reason other than to listen to the radio.
The first film, here's the thing: the first film had a few of those shots, but they indicated that these guys were doing things. Like there's the scene in the first film that shows like the Arabs and the Israelis coming together to fight the aliens, which was kind of a rah-rah moment, and it's corny, but it was at least it was something. It was something to get behind, because that's kind of cool.
The first movie, I would agree with you that it's not very good. I think that's obvious. It's not a very good movie, but structurally, it's actually, pretty solid when you think about it. Like, it's not good from a script level. Like, it's not good in terms of like, what characters say to each other and do, and there's some weird motivations and there's some weird arcs and stuff like that, and there's some general stupidity. But in terms of the story itself and the terms of the gravity of what's happening and the momentum of the overall the pacing and what's supposed to be important in the film, what we're supposed to feel, all of that registers. Mm-hmm. For the most part, it does. So it accomplishes what it's supposed to be doing, even if it's kind of doing it in a dumbish way. That movie set the tone and kind of defined summer blockbusters, for better or for worse, for the next decade or two. This movie, Independence Day Resurgence, I don't know, is this a reflection of where we're at now with franchise blockbuster flicks?
This is what it felt like to me. It felt like Battleship, in that it is a completely... It's an action movie that when watching it, I had no investment with any of the characters. I found myself bored during these scenes that are supposed to be adventurous. I nearly fell asleep a couple times during this movie. And then I saw Free State of Jones, which has been accused of being a slow movie, and I did not fall asleep once. I didn't even feel the urge to fall asleep. So it's not a matter of tiredness. We will. Yeah. I'm just saying, it's not a matter of being tired. It's a matter of this movie provided me with nothing exciting, even when it was trying to be exciting.
Yeah, there's just no interest, not from the filmmaker's point of view or from the audience's point of view. There's just no attention grabbing. There's no
stakes.
Eye-catching. There's no stakes. Like I said before, the gravity of it all. Like, for example, in the first movie, while the first movie is doing things in a dumb way, you actually do get a sense of the destruction that's happening. Mm-hmm. You do kind of get a feel that lives have been lost and that people are grieving and they have to pick up, and you get a sense that every life counts in that movie.
You basically see London get destroyed in this film.
And you see airplanes falling and crashing. You hear people screaming, and you don't give a fuck about any of it.
You don't see any results. You don't see the aftermath, really.
And it wasn't even well established to begin with. the movie literally kills half the planet in the first 20 minutes or so, something like that. Like it just does that. It doesn't, maybe not 20 minutes, but it does it really quickly.
You know what I want to see, Bill? I don't fuck critic reviews. Do you know who I want to see review this movie?
Donald Trump.
Well, Jesus Christ.
This movie was excellent. It was superb. It has class. So does Scotland.
Yeah.
No,
okay. Yeah, seeing Trump review it may be interesting, but I'm more interested in seeing it reviewed by first of all, astronomers, because I'm curious what they would have to say, or physicists, what they would have to say about.
Oh, you want to see Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I was trying to get his name.
He's done it. He's done it before. He reviewed Interstellar on Twitter. You know, he's done some reviews. You know,
he reviewed Gravity, and I would like to see him review what would happen if a spaceship that's like an eighth the size of Earth lands on Earth. How that would impact. First of all, they nearly destroyed the moon. So, I mean, the moon, you know, probably isn't pulling in the same kind of current that it was before. They say that even a tiny shift in Earth's orbit could destroy the balance that we have, that maintains seasons, that encourages the growth of plant life. And that
there really is a fragility to this world and to how worlds operate. You know?
Now, this is me in full nitpick mode, but fuck it, this movie deserves it. I guarantee you, if this ship landed on Earth the way it does, which it doesn't so much land as it does slam the fuck into it, I guarantee you that Earth would be done for anyway.
Just by that impact, yeah. Not to mention the laser battles and shit like that it creates. But I want to bring up something that's not even a nitpick. It's just a stupid thing. Maybe it's a nitpick, but it's really something that the movie did that I always have a problem with whenever any movie does this. The movie opens with a transmission, basically the distress call, going through space, kind of like in the movie Contact when the radio signals are leaving Earth, and except in that movie that was done with purpose and to establish stuff, you know, the setting and all that good stuff. In this movie, the distress beacon's going through the galaxy, going through the universe, whatever, and it hits the alien ship, one of the ships or whatever, and we see in a video Bill Pullman giving the Independence Day speech, and I'm like, wait a minute, that was broadcasted? like through satellites? And on top of that, there was video broadcasted of that? And on top of that, the video happened to look exactly like the movie? How did the aliens obtain this? This is a distress call. This isn't the actual, you know, speech that, you know what I mean? That was
they saw the last movie.
That just pissed me off from the get-go. I was like, okay, I understand what the movie's trying to do. They're trying to rehash that speech and then have a moment where an alien puts his hand over it and goes, "Fuck those people. We're gonna."
I call that Star Trek 3 syndrome, because in Star Trek 3, there's this like there's so many scenes that involve like video of things happening where it's like there was no camera there. What the movie begins with the ending of The Wrath of Khan, you know, where Spock dies valiantly, but it's all supposed to be like captured on security camera, a security camera that just happens to correlate exactly with, you know, footage from the last movie.
Yeah, right.
And then Star Trek 4 takes the explosion of the USS Enterprise, and that scene is replayed at the beginning of Star Trek 4 as evidence in a scene, and it's like, who the fuck was filming that?
Now those are actually, for the most part, good movies. You can argue about number 3, but for the most part, those are good enough and entertaining. In Resurgence, things like that, like what I just pointed out with the speech and everything, are examples of laziness and horrid choices. You know, there are so many moments in this film. Oh my god. Like Liam Hemsworth struggles through one-liners or attempts at one line. He's like, he says like stupid lines of dialogue in the way I'll describe it, half-hearted lines of dialogue, half-heartedly.
He's trying to be this movie's Chris Pratt from Jurassic World.
Yeah, he's really trying to be like some charismatic badass when he's not that at all. He can't. He's a wooden box. That's and his only claim to fame is that he can kind of make that one emotion. That's that's that scream. Ah! I'm trying to control the ship, but I have to make my face to make it look like I'm controlling the ship. There was that bit where they're inside the tug as London is being destroyed, which I want to point out. In the first Independence Day, shouldn't London have already been destroyed?
They rebuilt it. There was 20 years in between.
Yeah, I know 20 years, but that's a big city. That takes a while to rebuild. Things are going to look a little different. You know what I mean? They're not going to look exactly.
They rebuilt Washington, D.C. to look exactly as it looks.
Yeah, good point. But still, I mean, I guess there are blueprints and schematics to make of these, famous landmarks, but still.
What about Brent Spiner, by the way?
Well, we'll get into him in a second, but real quick, when London is being destroyed and the people inside that little tug, like Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's in this movie for no reason, and Jeff Goldblum and Liam Hemsworth and the guy from the Mountain Goats, they're looking out. Seriously, by the way, there's a guy who looks like the lead singer of the Mountain Goats who has an integral role in this film.
Yeah, who the fuck? Wait. What was integral about his character? I didn't even know what his character was there in the movie for.
He's integral in that he has kind of an arc when everyone else doesn't have an arc. His arc is that he goes from whiny bitch boy to somewhat hero.
What was he even there for? There's like this throwaway line at the very beginning.
To be comic relief, but his comic relief was so weak and not funny. But anyways, they're in the ship and they're looking at the destruction of London, and we see the reflection, like that we see from their perspective. Well, no, we see from the cockpit, and we're looking right at them as they're looking out at London, and they don't know how to react. They're just looking like, probably because the director didn't tell them what they're supposed to be looking at. Probably because the director was like, oh, that's fine, whatever. This is George Lucas doing Attack of the Clones all over again. They didn't, like, Ewan McGregor didn't know what he was supposed to, because he's in a blue screen nightmare. Just like in this movie, they're just in front of a green screen. Okay, just look as if you're looking. Well, that's not enough direction, Roland. We need to know what exact. Give us like at least with James Cameron's Avatar, he had that program that allowed him to see the environment as they were shooting it. So he could show the actors, okay, this is what you're supposed to be living in.
Right.
Like, okay, well, can't you use that? I know it's expensive, but can't you use that? Or something similar? Maybe a storyboard? I don't know. So anyway, Brent Spiner, who clearly died in the first movie, and I saw a clip from the first movie recently on YouTube, and either his neck broke or he suffocated to death.
Right.
Because his eyes are wide open and he's laying with his tongue out and he's pitch white.
And they try to write that away by saying he's been in a coma for 20 years. And okay, even if you grant the possibility that they were able to revive him or something like that, even if you're able to grant that, he had his neck broken, so shouldn't he be like crippled completely?
No. This movie's so stupid.
Well, and to be fair, Brent Spiner's character is essentially the mad scientist thing, and so that's at least...
He was supposed to be dumb comic relief in the first movie, and also to give some exposition, like as to the Area 51 stuff.
Right.
But he wasn't like an important character. No. He was totally ancillary,
He's in this movie because Brent Spiner hasn't worked in years and needs a paycheck. That's
no offense to Brent Spiner. We all like Brent Spiner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But when was the last time you remember seeing Brent Spiner in anything?
Probably the Big Bang Theory television show as himself. You know, they do those bits where a Star Trek actor will come on and be himself.
Even more wasted though than Brent Spiner, because I mean,
Robert Loggia, who shows up in a wheelchair.
Yeah, well, that was a waste. But their replacement choice for Will Smith is
some guy.
This actor named Jesse T. Usher, and the movie begins with just the best way you can possibly bring a new young actor into a film, which is you open with the hero shot of a poster of Will Smith, the great Will Smith at the peak of his powers, and then the camera pans around, and you're thinking, did they get Will Smith? Did they actually? Oh, it's a guy.
Some guy. Yeah. Now, to be fair, I don't think he did a bad job, but again, this is a problem of direction.
They didn't give him anything to do in the movie.
They didn't give him anything to do. He was just told to be kind of heroic, and that's not enough.
He didn't even try to access the smart alecky Will Smith aspect.
Right, you think he would, and he wasn't even Will Smith's character's son in that movie. He was the stepson. Like, he wasn't biologically. I mean, yeah. He was the son, but he wasn't like.
You're right. So I guess him not being like that, I don't know. But it's, to me, that opening hero shot of the Will Smith poster is just the worst thing you can do for that guy as an actor, because what you're saying is, so do you remember how awesome Will Smith was in the previous film?
Well, here's this guy.
We couldn't afford him, so here's this guy.
Either that or Will Smith saw the writing on the wall and knew this was going to suck.
Right. They keep doing this because in The Bourne Legacy, there's that scene early on in the film where they show a picture of Matt Damon just to remind you of when you had Bourne in a Bourne movie. And it's a mistake to do that. If you're going to replace a major character in all but name, I guarantee you this script was written with Will Smith in mind, and they just said, it's son.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Yeah. That's what they did.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had that problem with Liam Hemsworth, where Liam Hemsworth almost killed him in a training exercise, but
which they set up so well, right?
That amounts to nothing. But what would have been better if this movie actually cared to be a movie, they would have established that Liam Hemsworth accidentally killed his dad
I was thinking that's what they were going to go for.
Like, it was like, no, you accidentally knocked into my plane, and I almost knocked into a mountain, so I had to escape with the thing.
They said his dad died in a training accident, like as a test pilot. So wouldn't that have been like a deeper character arc, that like he made an error or something that resulted in the death?
And now through this big event of the world almost just being destroyed again, the two of them are going to come together and resolve their differences. Okay, humans can relate to that. No, let's not do that.
There's a problem with that. That would result in a person watching the film having emotion.
Yeah, right. What else haven't we covered? Oh, the giant talking space egg.
Yes. You go ahead.
Basically, the very first incident of an alien encounter in this movie, after 20 years, is this floating ship. We don't really know what it is, but everyone on Earth who has had some contact with the aliens keep writing the symbol down, which is a circle and a little line drawn next to it.
It's the power button on your TV.
Yeah, it's essentially the power button on TV, but turned the other way. So they decide to shoot this ship down because they're scared. They don't know what the fuck this is, and they have a moon base where they replicated the original mothership laser beams. So they fire at it, and they think, okay, enemy vanquished, whatever. Then the real ship comes in, and they realize, oh, that first ship was probably something else, and we don't think that was them. So they're able to recover that thing, bring it to Area 51, and Brent Spiner, after waking up from his coma, which he was woken up probably because of the aliens approaching, and they affected his brain or something, which also affected Bill Pullman and a couple other characters because they had some contact with aliens. They're able to crack open the ship, and it's revealed inside to be the thing from 2001: A Space Odyssey, the robot, not the robot, the AI presence. Only it's a dumb woman talking, and it's a white space egg.
Whoa. A dumb woman talking? Are we getting into some sexism here, Bill?
No, it's a woman who happens to be dumb.
Okay, all right.
I'm not getting. I would say you're pushing it, dude. Like I'm not.
You're
pushing
the one who said a
pushing
dumb woman.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that, everyone. I'm not a chauvinist.
The voice actor was a poor choice, is what I would say.
Okay, the voice actor was a woman who was a poor choice.
They could have easily chosen a woman voice actor for the role, but whoever they chose, Did you notice that there's some issues with script in this film? In that the way lines are read seems, I don't know, alien.
Again, that's a problem with direction. I think Roland Emmerich just literally didn't have the energy or the care about this. But anyway, there's a space egg that's an AI from a distant galaxy which has fought these aliens before.
And it's a Russian nesting doll, because first they destroy the giant space egg that's like the size of the moon. And then after they destroy that, inside is a smaller space egg. And then there's a smaller space egg inside of that.
Yeah, right. And this space egg says that basically their species has turned into a virtual existence, which makes no sense. Unless maybe they're all in virtual reality, like in that movie with Bruce Willis. What was that movie called? Surrogates?
Yeah, Surrogates.
Or something. Maybe that's what they mean. I don't know. It's a little hard to describe.
Maybe they're all jacked into the Matrix.
Maybe that Kurzweil guy can shine some light on this. The futurist guy, Ray Kurzweil. But anyway, so
the amazing Criswell from Ed Wood.
The amazing Criswell could do it. Yeah. You are interested in the mysterious. No,
I predict that this will be a very boring
great success
movie.
No, poor boys. The only success this movie has is that it fails hard, really hard.
I have a feeling this movie, internationally, this movie is probably going to be successful because, and I hate to say this, but there was an extended random sequence set in China watching a Chinese city explode. Meaning, this movie is going to be a huge hit in China because.
Also, there's a Chinese character who someone falls in love with for no reason,
and she has like 3 lines in the movie. But yeah, you're right.
Should we talk about Judd Hirsch? How he is there again?
Yeah.
Now they do something kind of interesting where he's got a book that he wrote. And he's like, this is how I came up with the idea to save the world, okay? And he's talking to like a group of elderly people because that's the only people that will bother to listen to him ramble.
Right.
And then when the destruction starts to happen, his boat overturns, and he's discovered by some kids in a car whose parents are probably dead, and they rescue him.
Mm-hmm.
And he, in them, he's found basically the people that are going to appreciate him for his accomplishment of saying a word that got his son to figure out the virus thing. So I thought, okay, that was a comical arc, but it wasn't good. It was just kind of, in a better movie, it would have been okay.
He's in this movie because he was in the last one.
Because remember Judd Hirsch?
Yeah.
Remember Juwanna Man?
Was he in Juwanna Man? I haven't seen.
No, he wasn't. He was just because you said Jew Man, or I said Jew Man, and then I said Juwanna Man because it sounded like Jew Man.
Right. Yeah. Call back.
So, call back. Yes. So this movie is bad. It ranks and stanks up there with the worst of movies you'll see this year.
Oh, it ranks all right.
It ranks and it stinks. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't like it. No, sir.
No, sir, I didn't like it. I think it's safe to say this movie was made by a dumb woman. I mean, it's a dumb movie. I'm not a chauvinist pig.
And speaking of movies with dumb women, Clown is next.
Well, I don't think she was a dumb woman. I think she was.
I'm just continuing the sarcastic.
The horrible theme that you started. Yeah.
We don't actually mean it.
We don't mean to say that women are dumb. We don't mean to say that any woman is dumb. We don't mean we just mean that some women in particular could be as dumb as other men.
What we mean is that in horror movies, the female character is traditionally cast as a victim, and the victim in a horror movie will generally make very stupid decisions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're dealing with like a horrible situation. They don't know how to act. I wouldn't know how to act. But anyways, Clown is not probably. I would say it's one of my favorite movies I've seen this year. That I'm giving it high praise because I really liked it. Now, Ken, you saw it and you liked it as well, but probably not as much as I liked it.
I liked it a great deal. Would I call it one of my favorite movies of the year? I mean, to be honest,
it's hard to say. Yeah,
there hasn't been a whole lot of great movies this year. There have been some good ones, but it's probably on the list at the moment. But it's one of those movies that may make my top 10 now, but by the end of the year, it probably will have moved off the list.
Yeah, well, we should say this isn't Clown with a K. That foreign film about the perv guy.
No.
This is Clown with a C, made by John Watts and produced by Eli Roth. Mm-hmm. Eli Roth was impressed by John Watts's teaser trailer he made, almost like a Grindhouse trailer that he made to promote this film.
And not only was it a teaser trailer, but it was a teaser trailer advertised as an Eli Roth film. So the ballsiness of him just saying...
It was pretty ballsy, yeah.
We know what Eli Roth does, so here's our movie that Eli Roth totally would make.
And Eli Roth agreed, and so they entered production, and 2 years later we get Clown.
And thankfully this movie is not written by Eli Roth.
Actually... That is a good thing because this movie's very smart. But if Eli Roth had written it, it would be good in the schlock sense.
Well, what it wouldn't have is likable characters.
That's true. It would be very miserable. But anyways, Clown. What is it about? The movie just gets going from the start. This kid has a birthday party and he really likes clowns. Unfortunately, the clown that's been hired had scheduled a couple things at the same time, so he can't make it to this party. So the mom calls the dad, who's kind of a meek, nerdy-ish looking guy, a real estate agent type person. Well, he is a real estate agent. He's at a real estate property that he's fixing up. He's in the basement, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll fix it." And he's looking through. Apparently, the person that owned this house used to own like a costume shop or something. Mm-hmm. Conveniently, but those things happen. Whatever.
It would be more fun without convenience.
I know, but he wouldn't be able to get the plot going without it. So he opens up a chest, and inside is a clown costume. So he's like, "All right, I scored." So he goes to the party. He makes his kid happy, whatever. But as the day progresses and as the week progresses, he can't take the clown suit off.
Right. At the end of that day, he realizes that he can't, like, the nose is stuck, the
hair is growing into his scalp.
Even the clown costume itself seems to be, like, sticking
attached
to his skin.
Yeah, and his makeup keeps reappearing despite him constantly washing it off. He even goes to the ER at one point, which I believe you wrote in the Facebook chat. This is the dumbest or the worst ER doctor ever.
Right, because if you were an ER doctor and someone comes to you and literally all of their clothing is stuck, your assumption is going to be someone played a prank on them and used super glue or something, and so they would, they would give them an or something to get the thing unstuck, and then they would realize, wait a second, this is stuck for other reasons, and then they would actually try surgery or something like that.
Right, because this could lead to suffocation. This could lead to, all sorts of different things.
But then there wouldn't be a movie if they did that. So
right, so they have to just say, "Oh, you're an idiot. So here's some pain medicine or something."
And a wonderful piece of body horror. The first thing that he attempts to force off of him is his clown nose.
Well, actually, he does try to do the clown nose, but he also tries to get the clothes off. And to do that, he takes like a wood saw, an electric saw, and puts it under the shirt and tries sawing it off.
Right. And he can't saw it off, and then he tries cutting at like the cuffs on his shirt, and he ends up slitting his wrist.
Yeah, he's like, he makes those noises and everything.
But
So,
then he convinces his wife to
who
use a
is a
pair of
nurse?
pliers.
His wife is a nurse.
Yes. And to use a pair of pliers and just tear the red nose off his face. And when I say tear, it tears his nose off.
Like, we see skin and pus, it just rips off. And essentially giving him a permanent red nose now, because it's all red. So basically, he can't get this friggin' thing off. And slowly and subtly, he's finding himself looking at kids a little more often.
Which is creepy.
Which is creepy. Like, we see him kind of glancing over at kids like with more attention. You know what I mean? It's a really nice touch. They did this. They established this early on that he's gonna, have a hunger. You know what I mean? We're not suggesting anything sexual. We're suggesting that he's going to become a cannibal and eat kids because the clown costume happens to be the skin of a demon, which we find out from the great Peter Stormare.
Oh, God, yes.
Who is absolutely wonderful in this film. Yes. I think.
The movie, here's where I was in the movie, Bill. Let me walk you through this. The opening to that movie, the first 15 minutes or so, which was kind of an extended version of most things you saw in the trailer originally. I was thinking, so they're rushing into this pretty quick. Are they gonna just jump to him turning into a monster, and then like the whole rest of the film is just gonna be this monster movie? And they didn't do that. And the way I found out that they didn't do that was they brought Peter Stormare into it. And so the moment he appears in the film, I said, you know what? This movie has taken a turn for... This movie has just made a smart move. Because that opening is great, but it also threatened to go off the rails.
Yeah.
And in a way, it goes off the rails, but in a positive way when Peter Stormare enters the book.
Now, when Stormare enters, we don't see his face. We see a phone conversation that we keep cutting back and forth to from our main character to the bottom part of Stormare's body. Mm-hmm. Like he's like standing next to a table, and the dude's like, "Hey, yeah, I found this chest in your brother's house. I'm a real estate agent, and I put on I had some questions about the costume and blah blah blah." And the guy's like, "Oh, costume? Yeah, everything's perfectly normal. Don't worry about it." He's getting all anxious and
I'll come pick up the costume.
Yeah, I'll come pick it up. Don't worry about it. Oh, you can come here to my place. Yeah. No, there's nothing to worry about. Stormare is acting awesome in this sequence, and we don't even see his face.
And then he says very offhandedly and very seriously, "Whatever you do, do not put the costume on.
Don't touch it." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm wearing it right now." And then he drops everything like, "Oh."
You hear dead silence, and then you hear a voice that's clearly someone trying to speak positively. And
yeah, exactly. He's trying to cover up something. Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll be over, and we'll see what's going on."
So they finally meet, and Stormare drugs him with tea, because and we learn later on why he did it, but he's about to cut the guy's head off. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, "This is the only way. This is the only way." And we learn later the reason why it's the only way is because there are actually two ways to get rid of this costume. One way is to cut the guy's head off. That'll kill the demon. Mm-hmm. Or the other way is to just give him 5 children to eat.
And if he eats 5 children, then the curse is lifted on that particular person.
Right, and they can just do whatever they want to the costume or hide it, whatever, and hope no one ever touches it. This movie is great in terms of using everything at the disposal of the cinematic language. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, every shot and every frame is well crafted. The production design is perfect.
I will agree with that, certainly.
Maybe like you brought up the lighting and the color grading wasn't quite. It was like too dim, or
lighting and color correction was a problem. It was a little dim, but it was more that everything was so gray, and the only scene that had any real color in it was just because I don't think you could avoid color, and that was the scene in the the Playhouse tunnels.
Oh yeah, you couldn't avoid that in those. No, but what I mean by like the cinematic language and everything is we see a lot of suggestive imagery that foreshadows what's about to happen or what's going to happen later on. Like for example, there's a simple shot of the wife who told someone early on that she's now pregnant,
Right.
and we see a suggestive shot of her womb area as she's walking towards the next room, which I think has her husband in it or something. And there's a lot of shots in this movie that do things like that very subtly that suggest there's going to be an issue with this particular problem or this particular subject or this particular person or whatever. There's going to be something that's going to happen later on. There'll be an object placed in the background or in the foreground that we're kind of focused on a little bit, or that a character is nearby, and it's just done really well. And the suggestions and the imagery, it's telling the story of the movie on a deeper level that I think people will appreciate if they're looking for that kind of stuff. If you're just looking for a movie about a guy who turns into a clown and eats kids, I think you're also going to be happy, But if you're looking for like a movie that's just really, really well crafted and well made, this surprisingly is it. My favorite sequence is probably the most absurd sequence, which happens to take place in the Chuck E. Cheese's that we don't know is a Chuck E. Cheese's. What I mean by that is the only way we know it's a Chuck E. Cheese's are two things. One, the wife early in the film says that they weren't going to go to Chuck E. Cheese's for the birthday party because that would have been a nightmare, which it turns into a nightmare later on. Later on, they find out that the dad, who is now a clown, a monster demon clown, has gone into the Chuck E. Cheese's, but we don't see the sign. We only see the reflection of the sign, and it's obscured a little bit, probably because they didn't have the rights to the logo or something, So that was done really well. I like that. I liked how they kind of avoided that. But it's clearly a Chuck E. Cheese's on the inside. Kids are running wild. Employees are frustrated. It's a pain in the ass for any adult who's anywhere near it. And then the clown comes out and, oh my God, I sat in pee. And it turns out it's blood. And, then they're going through the fun tunnels and he's eating them and everything. And it's never really funny, but it is, I would say it's devious. Like there's
a lot of moments of humor. When he's trying to commit suicide.
Anytime you see the demon blood, it's all rainbow, and that's the first time we see it. I think is when he shoots himself in the mouth. He's like, "This is the only way I can, because I don't want to do any of this stuff." He puts the gun in his mouth and he blows a hole in the back of his head, and the blood hits the wall, and the blood is rainbow colored, and he doesn't die.
and then when he's trying to cut his head off using two
table saws.
Two table saws put together.
And he's leaning off a chair trying to fall onto it because he doesn't,
And he does a complete Chevy Chase style pratfall that completely misses the mark, and he utterly fails to kill himself.
But he ends up killing a kid who comes into the room just at the right moment when the saw flies off and cuts the kid.
And I think the film made a good decision in killing that kid the way they did, because you have to admit it's that annoying trope of the too curious little kid who it's like, kid, come on, leave him alone. He's an adult and he doesn't want you to go near him. Don't.
Right, exactly.
And so when it was one of those things where it's sort of like in Planet Terror when the kid kills himself by shooting himself in the head right after the mom tells him not to play with the gun.
Yeah. It's like that.
It's that moment where it was played completely seriously, not like something you were supposed to laugh at, but you can't help but get a sadistic chuckle at it just because I told you not to do it.
That's what I mean by this movie's devilish type humor, where it's not quite funny. You don't really want to laugh at it, but you, like you said, chuckle. It's kind of like a But
It's
it's
a
like,
stimulus
ooh.
response.
Yes, that's what it is. This movie is just so well crafted and so well done. It was such a surprise, and I'm really happy now that they got this guy, John Watts, to do Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Marvel gives and Sony gives him the full reign or enough reign to direct as much of it as he wants, the way he wants, I think it'll be a real gem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've not seen Cop Car yet, but I've heard great things, and it's definitely on my short list of things to see. And especially now after having seen Clown, I want to see what else this director has done.
Yeah. So I guess we should get into the final movie of the night, which is Matthew McConaughey's Free State. Well, he didn't direct it, but I think it's safe to say he helped produce it. Free State of Jones.
What's interesting is he's not listed in any of the production credits in the movie.
I don't know why. He seemed like an advocate for this movie, like he really wanted it to get made.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he just helped put it together, but he wasn't actually a producer. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually was watching the credits specifically because I was trying to figure out who produced it. And it's interesting in that the producers in the film were mostly, like, it looked like there was a lot of overseas, particularly Chinese producers.
One of the distribution or production companies listed in the beginning credits is the H Brothers?
Yes.
Which was really weird because this is a movie specifically about Civil War South. And I thought that's very funny. Like, foreigners helped make this movie.
That said, though, this is the kind of American movie that I think the Chinese government, the quote communist government, might
probably want you to see. Yeah,
because it's a movie about people fighting against the money grubbing wealth.
Right, exactly.
The richer halves. And so there's sort of a propagandistic nature to it. You could argue that could inspire funding from, say,
that's a good point. I might have to bring that up. I'm going to be reviewing or writing about this movie for a website called Occupy.com, which is a media website which is kind of about activism news and stuff like that.
And this is not to say that the movie's a piece of propaganda per se, but I'm sure that we're going to get into that.
It definitely has a political bent to it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can pull that out of this particular story, but it really plays it hard. Not necessarily hammering you over the head with it so much, maybe in one particular instance. But anyways, you know a lot more about this type of history than I do.
I'll go ahead and quickly summarize the historical background of it. The movie is based on true events about this man named Newton Knight, who is one of those historical figures from the Civil War who is equally loved and reviled depending on whom you ask in the South. He was a anti-Confederate rebel who had fought originally for the Confederacy, and he deserted and essentially started. He basically started sheltering escaped slaves. He sheltered or not escaped, but fellow deserters from the Confederate Army and others disaffected with the Confederate cause, and established his own little private kingdom in the middle of Mississippi. And I shouldn't say kingdom per se, because from all accounts, it was not treated like a king. It was more of a
commune.
Yeah, a commune's a good way to put it, because there was no. While he was sort of the ersatz leader, everything was done, with the say of the group.
Yeah.
And with popular consent. That's the way to put it. And what's intriguing about it, though, is Jones County, Mississippi, was one of the few areas, instances during the war, of a Southern community of people who just straight up fought against the Confederate cause. There were people elsewhere who opposed the Confederate cause, at least. I mean, if in so many words, but this was the only armed uprising against it, undertaken by a multiracial community.
Yeah.
And the events as depicted in the movie Free State of Jones more or less do stick to the basic historical facts, with a few characters who are cobbled together from a handful of different characters.
Amalgamations.
Yeah, amalgamations. That's a good way to put it. And a few events which are used as sort of a way of... Well, for example, we don't really know the specific reasons why Newton Knight defected from the Confederate Army, but in this movie they gave him a reason, because that information is not really available to history.
Yeah,
and because they depict it as being like it was like a nephew of his that dies.
Yeah. Basically, he's already kind of worn out about this war. He's already got his misgivings about the reasons behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That just sealed the deal for him. A family member dying for no reason, really.
Right.
Or for no good reason. There's that scene where he's about to bring his nephew's corpse back to his family home, and he's putting on the horse and everything, and a fellow Confederate soldier and friend says to him, "He died with honor." And he's like, "No, he just died."
Which, by the way, is such a Matthew McConaughey line, isn't it?
No, he just died.
Yeah. So let me first, before I get into my thoughts on it, Bill, since you saw this movie at a preview screening, what are your thoughts overall?
Well, I thought this movie was really well done up until about the end of the Civil War portion of the film. That's when I felt like it was getting into preachy territory. When not that that's terrible. They handled it well.
It's really hard to avoid in Civil War drama.
I can't
think of a Civil War drama that doesn't have preachiness in it. And I mean,
maybe,
hell, if you look at Gettysburg, there's entire goddamn sermons in that movie.
Right, so they're literally preachy. No, but there is preachiness in this film, but it's never like I never felt like it was hitting me over the head with a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like maybe it was overdone a couple times, like it was getting repetitive at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point. But what I mean by it ending in the middle, there's this from the beginning to about the middle, Newton Knight befriends these escaped slaves and deserters,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly gains the trust of this community in the swamp that he helps to build and cultivate. And they create this armed insurrection, so to speak, against the Confederacy, and they're just basically wanting to live alone by themselves. They don't want to get in any trouble. They don't want to get into this war, whatever. They're against it. That's fine.
They just want to keep what they
own, and they don't want to be told what to do.
Exactly.
Or when it comes to this war. And we establish a couple of antagonists. We establish a Confederate, I guess, general or colonel or something, and a lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And
the general's based on a real person, by the way. The lieutenant is an amalgamation of a few different characters. But
I bet. But we see this big fight that takes place during like a funeral procession, which is a really well done sequence. It felt like, get them, that kind of thing. And and it even has a nice little ending to it too, where he just strangles this guy to death, which was a little much. I mean, but I guess he did it because the guy had hung a couple of young kids, so it was like payback in that sense.
The real history behind that is, yes, we believe unconfirmed reports show that he probably did kill that guy, but we don't know the reason, really.
Yeah, it could have been whatever, but
you got to give him a reason because it's a movie.
Because it's a movie, it's a dramatization, and it's got to be about something. It can't just be about what may have happened. It's got to,
mm-hmm.
get down to it. So that's where I thought the movie was going to end, or near its end,
mm-hmm.
Because by that point it was about an hour in, I think.
That was actually further in than you think. I think that was about hour and a half, maybe.
Really? Because the rest of the movie felt like another hour.
And
it
this
dragged.
is where we get into
This is where we get into the problems of the movie, which is once this movie into the pacing. Yes, once that sequence is done with, which felt like the climax, but really wasn't. We have a whole 30, 40 minutes of movie left where it's nothing but rudimentary politics and depressing denouements.
Which, by the way, as a history buff, I actually appreciate a lot of the scenes they were depicting because they were actually very accurate depictions of things that occurred in the Reconstruction era.
I appreciate that.
From a film perspective, it threw off the pacing of the film. I almost get the feeling that there's a much longer film that was cut down. Like that, I wouldn't be surprised if there's Free State of Jones and then a second film, which is all like post-Civil War.
Yeah, it did feel like there were two films kind of mashed together inappropriately in a way.
Three, actually, because...
Oh, yeah, there's... Well, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Because there's a third movie, sort of. Every once in a while... we'll get into it now, actually. There's a throwback, flashback, or flash forward, rather.
To 70 years later.
To, like, what, the 50s or the 60s or something?
The late 1940s.
Late 1940s in Mississippi, where a white man with 1/8... who's determined to have 1/8 African-American blood in him, cannot marry another white person, cannot be married to a white woman in the state of Mississippi.
Because the laws in Mississippi stated that if you have 1/8 or greater black blood in you, then you were a black person, period.
Right. And I suppose you could see... No, you can't see any of that. No. I don't know where I was going with that.
That's eugenics is what that is.
That's totally wrong. And you can't see the other side of it. As a matter of fact, this movie is very, very much on one side, and that is that the South at this time, at both times, were monstrous and horrible. Not everyone in the South, but the South politics. You know, the South, like the people in charge and the people trying to lead or wanting to lead, and the people wanting to exploit were doing some rather horrible things. And for the most part, got away with a lot of it.
And I don't think you can argue that point, that some pretty horrible things were done in the name of the Confederacy. Of course, some pretty horrible things were done in the name of the Union as well.
It wasn't exactly a clean war, so to speak, but by any means, it wasn't a clean war. But the difference you have is you have one side which effectively was fighting for, quote, states' rights, but those states' rights were to continue owning human beings. Which the movie states, you can't own a child of God.
Right. And that is the historical character Newton Knight actually did have an an interracial relationship, and he was known to be a person who didn't really care if you were black or white. So that's an interesting piece of history. One thing I appreciate in this film is they found a way to avoid this being a white savior movie, because
they really did. They really did.
While he is the white guy who sort of sort of ran this community, he doesn't take advantage of the black people around him or the white people around him. Even the way he's depicted and the way the film is made does not. He's not even really deified either. They just
no, not at all. No, he's just kind of the default leader.
One of my favorite smaller characters in the film is one of the escaped slaves character named Moses.
I wouldn't say he's a small character. I would say he's actually probably not quite the top character, but he's definitely not the top character. But he's very important, I would say.
Right. He's important, and it's the one thing. I know you were saying that the post-war aspect of the film ran a little slower. The parts of the film dealing with Moses post-war was, in my opinion, one of the most important depictions of what occurred in the post-Civil War South that has ever been put to film. And that is that there was a brief period during the Reconstruction era when black people were basically given this idea that they were going to, have a say in their community. And Moses is sort of the martyr of that. He's the character that tries to register people to vote, and he's one of the first victims of the
KKK.
Right, the KKK and the upturn in where you have a lot of former slave owners stirring up racial hatred amongst the poor by saying, look at them, they're getting all these things. Why can't we have more things?
Because they're getting have those things, asshole.
Right? They didn't have those.
And those little tweaks in laws. Okay, slavery is abolished, but apprenticeship. That's totally fine,
Yeah, apprenticeship laws, which, by the way, that basically was a system of legalized slavery where you could take anyone upon as an apprentice, and they couldn't escape from you.
Which, if I were Matthew McConaughey's character, if I was Newton Knight, I'd have been like, "Oh, he's your apprentice, huh? When do you pick cotton, asshole?" I would say something like, "I want to see you out in the field, doing some shit like that, you fat ass."
The way this movie handles its politics reminds me a little bit of Braveheart in that it's not the most brilliantly written dissertation of history and politics from the era,
Sure.
and the dialogue is a little bit preachy, a little bit ham-fisted, but there's an inherent righteousness to the character that you can't help but appreciate.
There's a clarity and a clarity of the message, and that's not muddled in any way. It's not. It's pretty, like I said, clear as to what they're going after, and like you said, righteous. This is essentially they're on the right side of things, and my only, like I said, the dragging and the pacing near the end and all that, that sucks. But the movie, like you're getting into, is that it does well in expressing these historic incidents visually and emotionally. Like, for example, I love that after Moses was killed, they all go to vote, and there's so much tension in that scene when they are marching down the street to the voting office. Then they enter the voting office, and everyone's just looking at each other, and it's just so awkward and so filled with high tension, and you don't know if someone's going to pull a gun or not.
Oh, yeah.
And then the scene ends with that little credit that says, this is how many people voted that were white. This is how many people that voted that were black.
Well, it had the voters for the Democrat and the voters for the Republicans at the time.
Which you have to remember, at the time, the Republicans were essentially like the Democrats are now.
Yeah, there was a big reversal that took place in the 1900s that sort of changed that role. But in the time, the Republicans were essentially the progressives.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird how that happened, but whatever.
That's how it was. That's the way it was. And anyways, they were voting for what they felt would help them.
Now, did you notice, by the way, though, there were 40 of those guys who voted, and only 2 votes were counted.
Yeah, I want to know who those 2 were. That they probably
the 2 white guys who voted.
Oh right, yeah. Oh yeah. It wasn't just Matthew. It wasn't just Newton Knight. It was someone else.
Yeah, it was his friend. What's his name? Jasper.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I liked how Newton Knight, the character Newton Knight, was very stoic and depicted as stoic in the film. Matthew McConaughey is good at giving stoic performances, but also there was like this steely resolve. He wasn't like righteously brave. He wasn't like, no, I'm doing this because it's right, damn it, and fuck you. He was doing it more because it was right, and it's just the right thing to do. But he wasn't making a show of it. You know what I mean?
Well, the difference between Newton Knight, for instance, and then another Civil War era historic figure, John Brown, is John Brown would have been more McConaughey in his crazy phase. John Brown was an anti-slavery fighter who was a fiery brimstone man who would preach to everyone, and depicting him in film would be very difficult because he was a very theatrical character.
Yeah.
Most famously, what was famously said about him is that what's his name? God damn it, Frederick Douglass, the free man Frederick Douglass famously said, that while I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote in front of me, something along the lines of, I lived to see slaves free. John Brown died for it.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, Brown was someone who was willing, and not just died, but killed. I don't know if you know this one, Bill, but one of my favorite stories of John Brown is when he in Burning, Kansas, prior to the Civil War, he went to the house of some pro-slavery people and hacked them to death with swords alongside his children, who also hacked people to death with swords.
I can't say he's in the right here, but
no, he was a nutball. He was essentially a terrorist, but he was fighting against slavery, and so by Quentin Tarantino rules, he did the right thing.
Well, okay, well,
he was a nutball.
Not even by Quentin Tarantino rules. I mean, like, because in Django Unchained, I think Django had. Well, I wouldn't go so far as to kill people. He was doing it basically in defense, really. I mean, yeah, except maybe the last bit. The last bit was just for fun, but not for fun. But
Newton Knight though was a much more reserved personality in that he
there's that scene.
Had a heroic streak within him.
There's that scene in the movie where he goes to the shop, to the local grocery, I guess, to get some supplies to make a fence, and the locals who eventually become the KKK, like the one guy who's eating peanuts, is like, I hear you got. He says the N-word. I hear you got some of them up there in Jones County, and Newt's like, nope, there ain't none of them up there at all. He just says it like, lets it roll off his back. Well, there's none of them out there at all.
And by the way, do you notice how the movie really only used the N-word in very important moments where
there's that fiery speech. There's the one fiery speech he gives where he's really like intense and really passionate, where he uses the N-word to describe basically anyone who's being exploited or persecuted for horrible reasons or being put down, and beyond black or white. He's just saying, like, if you're like this, then you're an N-word. If you're like this, you're an N-word. That's how they see you, and we're gonna stop them. And that was done very passionately and well. Yeah.
This is a movie that it's a very passionate drama that ultimately it's not. I'm not going to put it in amongst best films of the year. I think it has a lot of good things going for it.
Yeah,
I think it's being unfairly maligned by critics right now. There's a lot of things. The pacing is the main problem. Its decision to keep switching to 70 years in the future, and a lot of the other things that throw in there feel. I hate to say this because Gary Ross is a filmmaker he's made some pretty good movies, but he's always had this weird thing. Like, there's always these technical things. Like Hunger Games had the same problem of like action scenes being a little too shaky. Pleasantville is overlong.
Yeah.
Seabiscuit is actually, if you want to accuse a movie of being overly, a historical film of being overly, in its own world, Seabiscuit really does that. But it's still an entertaining enough movie. Here's the thing. I might actually say this is my favorite Gary Ross movie, but that might be biased in the respect that I'm a big history buff, and I liked watching real history depicted in a very acceptably accurate way. It didn't play with the facts too terribly much, and it left a lot up to you to interpret. I have to give some big credit. We haven't mentioned yet some of the other actors. Gugu Mbatha Raw as Rachel, who is the black woman that Newton marries eventually. in his own eyes, not in the eyes of the law. And she does a really good job, and she and McConaughey have a really good chemistry in the film.
They do, don't they? It's very sweet and very it's very nice. And the actor that played go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it deals with the strange kind of aspect about his relationship with his previous wife who left him and then returned. And that did happen in real life, where he was living in sort of a polygamous situation for a while because his white wife returned and said, I don't have anywhere else to go. So, okay, you can stay here, I guess. Sure. And now in real life, he had about like 12 kids.
Nice.
From various people. I think putting that into the movie would have been interesting. I also think that this is a bloated movie in a lot of ways, as it was. So
it's probably best to hold that back a little bit.
In this movie, you see 2 kids, and that's fine in film terms, unless you're going to build this into a Roots-style miniseries. In that case, I would have actually loved to have seen the extended family of the Knights.
And he's just like there, like. It takes 2 to make them. That kind of thing. No. All right. There you go. The guy who played Moses, I know I've seen him in other movies, but I can't think of his name. You probably got the Wikipedia.
Oh, I do have it up, and his name I'm not good at pronouncing. I'll try. Mahershala Ali.
Oh, okay. He does really well in the movie. He's very good, very talented, performed it well. You really feel bad for him. You feel bad for him not just because he's a human, but because he gives you reason to feel bad for him, because you end up relating to him, which
he's actually going to be in Luke Cage, by the way.
Oh, yeah, he's not playing Luke Cage. He's just going to be in it.
Yeah, he's playing, I guess I've never heard of, he's playing a character named Cornell Stokes / Cottonmouth. I don't know.
It's a side character. I don't know if it's a villain or if it's a friend. I'm not sure. That's cool. That's cool. He's going to be in Luke Cage. But yeah, this is a movie. There's also a lot of familiar Southern actors in this movie too. There's David Jensen. He's the one that I immediately recognized. He was in Midnight Special. He was in King of Herrings. He was in The King of New Orleans. He's just a local actor who gets these roles whenever these productions come into town. He played the lawyer for the descendant of Newton Knight. The male who was trying to get married and they couldn't in Mississippi.
And Jacob Laughlin, who was in Mud. McConaughey probably brought him in.
Yeah. No, this was a very good movie. Obviously the pacing problems towards the end. It kind of has some false endings, like 1 or 2 here and there. And you don't really understand or know as an audience what they're trying to do with the connected story that takes place 70 years later. There's some connection there, but it's not, you're thinking like it's going to build to some big scene, but it doesn't really. It just kind of falls flat on its face.
And that might be the problem of making a movie that sticks close to history, because really the sad truth about Newton Knight's life is after the war, he did struggle for a while to champion some causes in his area amongst the freedmen, but then he kind of just lived his life. And how do you make a movie out of that?
Well, I think you can make a movie out of that. You just have to pick and choose which events to showcase at which times. You don't have to be like a straight, going back to Knight of Cups, you don't have to be a straight narrative. You can flash forward and backward, and that in itself will tell a straight story, but they didn't really do that here. The movie just kind of ends with, he wasn't able to marry her, but he deeded his land to her. That's how the movie ends. I was man.
Yeah, I mean that's
something, but that's not quite a positive note. It just says
I do have a piece of history for you that's fun though. Have you seen a picture of what Newton Knight looks like? the real guy?
No, what does he look like?
I'm going to show you what he looks like, and I want you to tell me if you agree with me that, yeah. All right, can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Or do you see
black,
the picture?
Yeah. No, I don't see the picture yet.
Oh, shit. All right, well, the screen share didn't work. Let me try this again.
Oh, okay.
For those listening,
I see you.
Yeah, for those listening, let's see. This won't be as interesting of a image to go because you won't have an image. But I just encourage you to go on Google and Google Newton Knight. Hold on, I'm trying. The problem is it's. Resemblance to their characters.
Sorry, I didn't catch any of that. I got cut off for a second, but that's okay. I'm sure it was fine. Did you try screen sharing, or I didn't?
Oh, my computer must have froze. I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
Just a moment. Hold on. All right.
You can always just send the link in the chat if you need to. But.
And all right, you know what? I'm just going to do my entire screen. Hell with it.
Okay.
All right. So look, now do you see?
Oh yeah, okay.
Does that not look like Matthew McConaughey?
It looks like him, but I would say that it's almost more Michael Shannon.
Yeah, well, Michael Shannon could have done it, sure, but McConaughey's, to borrow a term from Zoolander, he's very hot right now.
Yeah, really.
So you have to. Michael Shannon's
trending. Yeah,
he's on his way up, but he hasn't reached that point yet. I think he could, and I hope he does.
Yeah.
But that all being said, any closing thoughts on Free State of Jones?
It's better than what people will have you believe. But it's got some problems, but for the most part, it's a very good movie.
Rotten Tomatoes score has inched upwards a little bit.
What is it right now?
Well, as of like yesterday, it was like 17%. Today, it's 41%.
Well, at least it's going up, but that's still. I would give this as a Rotten Tomatoes score. I would give this maybe like a 70, 75.
Yeah, I think if I had to give it a score on Rotten Tomatoes, yeah, I would say 70. The 70 range.
Yeah, I think that's probably about accurate. Mm-hmm. It's if you can see it, I would say go see it. Unless of course you're going to see like the new Nicholas Winding Refn. Please tell us how that is.
Yes, if you have an opportunity to see.
Although I will be seeing that this weekend, but I would also like to know your thoughts on it, people. If you do, please send them to movieboozer.com or leave a comment under this video.
I do love how he's just in the title of this movie acknowledging his obsession with neon. Just straight up. Yeah, what of it? I like neon.
Yeah, what?
All my movies have neon. Even the ones set in the friggin' Viking Age used a lot of neon. Because I could.
What of it?
He wish he would say, of course, in an accent, but I don't do accents.
Oh yeah, I can't do his accent. I think it's a little. I don't know. I'll have to listen to him talk again. It's very specific. It's very.
Well, it's sort of like, he's from Denmark, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that Dutch, Danish, not Dutch. That Danish accent is kind of tough. It's like the guy who plays Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones, Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Yeah.
His accent is vague. It's like vaguely English with a hint of something else, and that's what most Danish people sound like when they speak English.
Something else. Where
it's like you hear kind of some British isms in it, and I think that's just because Denmark is relatively close to England, and so I'm sure in their English classes that's probably who teaches them. But there's this vague Scandinavian aspect to it that it's hard to put a pin on if you're trying to do the voice.
Yeah.
And certainly if you're Eddie Redmayne, you don't even attempt it.
No!
Yeah, I mean, well, I was thinking more of the Danish Girl,
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't see the Danish Girl. I'm sure maybe it's a good movie. I don't know. I don't remember what you thought of it, but
all I think of it is that Eddie Redmayne won the Oscar for Best Picture. So.
Yeah. He won the
best Eddie Redmayne of the year.
For the best Eddie Redmayne of the year, yeah. Poor Eddie Redmayne.
Eventually, maybe he'll do another role in a movie, and I'll be like, oh wow, he can do a good performance in the film. I would like to see that. I have yet to be convinced of that.
You should see The Yellow Handkerchief. He plays a Southern kid.
Interesting. I'll give that a look.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that having been said, that kind of wraps things up for this week's virtual pubcast. And I do want to thank you for joining us. This is a kind of a big episode because we had a lot of new movies to talk. Next week is going to be interesting because we kind of saw a couple of the movies that we were going to see for next week already. But that's fine. And hopefully we'll have some other people here to share their input.
Yep, hopefully.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Take care.
Bye.